Cheers, your boy Hakim, Green, Channel Live and Direct. BDP all day, every day. All we do is spark Madism. You're here, episode 5, Madism TV, and we have a very, very special guest today. And I think it's so important that we did this show, seeing as though it's live and direct from South Florida, and we really need to establish some things about South Florida. Florida, you know, rock bottom in terms of hip hop culture and where it stands down here, where it started, how it grew, how it developed, and then the fruits of that tree, you know, where we stand now. And I can think of no better guest to have this conversation with than no other than the phenomenal hip hop to a T, DJ EFN. My bro, what up, bro?
Good looking out, man. Appreciate the intro.
Yeah, man. So, you know, I don't even need these. I ain't got my. Get rid of these. I don't need this. So, yeah, man. You know, one, thank you for being a part of Madism TV.
No, thank you for having me.
Interview. And you know, I've been down here for 5 years now, and you know, there are a few folks that when you get their embrace, when you get the welcome, you know, hey, you family, come on in. You know, it feels real good. And you're one of those folks. The whole Crazy Hood Productions family, Drink Champs, of course. You guys embrace me and show me love, and I appreciate that so much, bro. Salute to you.
Nah, man, it's our pleasure, man. Thank you. Salute to you.
Yeah, so this month was Hip Hop History Month, right? So we just, you know, I like to, with Madism overall, establish foundational points of conversation. You know, when we talk about hip hop culture, what is it? The rap music versus hip hop culture. In terms of Miami, right? Now, I want to go back to like the 80s.
Okay.
Because we know hip hop in terms of the accepted birth date is 73, but we see that, you know, it gets its momentum picking up in the 80s. And then the culture in Miami, if I'm not mistaken, is very bass heavy, right? Can you talk about the culture, hip hop culture in Miami as it has to do with bass and what that meant for you guys down here?
Yeah, I mean, I was a kid. I don't know if you know this, but I was born in Los Angeles, and I moved out here in the 80s, in the mid to late 80s. That I moved a couple times back and forth. My parents got divorced, and my dad moved to Miami, and me and my mom were in LA, and they were trying to work it out back and forth. But when I got here, to me, it wasn't evident that it was bass music and it was a bass scene. The music was all one for us at the time. And I talk about this often. Like, you would have in the same tape, you know, the same as Run DMC, it'd be 2 Live Crew. There was no difference. And I don't think in that stage, I mean, I might be wrong because, again, I was a kid. I don't think that it was defining itself as its own genre in the sense of music, like bass music or Miami bass. It just was another form of rap and hip hop. And to me, you know, as a kid, I looked at it as that, nothing any different. I didn't have any regional, you know, scope of viewing things. And I was just a kid. I was going to the skating ring, or I was a skater. I would go to skate jams and different things like that. So it was all one to me. And you know, it wasn't until you started to, you know, hear more music and get a little older and kind of get a different perspective and see there was like a political and social divide that happened within like the culture in Miami, that it started to be well defined as like, this is Miami bass and this is bass music, and then this is kind of like hip hop over here.
That's interesting because, you know, when we think of hip hop in New York, you know, it was like lyrics, right? And the development of the culture, I guess, kind of was different than what was happening prior to hip hop culture, right? So you know, people in the clubs, whether we call it the trap or we call it, you know, a strip club or, you know, just a hangout spot, or culture is always culture and it's always happening. Culture didn't start with hip hop culture.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but when hip hop culture came, it was like something different than what was already going on, right? I remember coming down here in 88, 89. I was a background dancer for an artist named Nicole, and we had a show down here. And when we went, it was like, there was no Rakim, there was no KRS, there was no it was like the culture, the sound, the cadence, everything was different, and nobody cared what New York was doing, actually.
Right.
Which was like, it was kind of a beautiful thing where now music is so kind of, there's like this national sound that everybody listens to the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much down here. And that was kind of like a beautiful thing that the culture itself got a chance to develop on its own. So like looking at it from that, like graph art seemed to be more important down here throughout time because of the early influences of graph.
Right.
New York, by the time we get to the 80s in New York, graph, like the average person is not thinking about graph.
Right. I mean, my perspective from what I recollect is a little different from yours, from what you got, the snapshot you got when you got down here. Because
educate me.
Again, the way that I looked at it is, it was just a time frame, and it's hard to think about it now with the information age and the internet and how quickly things travel. But maybe you didn't hear Rakim, or maybe these things weren't prevalent when you got down because how long it took for it to travel down here. So the music, like again, in the same mixtape that I had that I would create or record off of the radio, I had Beasties and LL and and I had 2 Live Crew and MC Shy D and Gucci Crew. And if you really go back and listen to the beats and lyrics, I'm not saying they're the same, but they're not too far apart in terms of the sounds and the 808s and even I'll go back and listen to a 2 Live Crew record now, and I'm like, damn, they were pretty damn lyrical for the content that they were creating. So I just think that it was just a thing of how long it took for records to get down here. Because when I started making mixtapes, fast forward, I would drive up the East Coast to the record stores to buy white labels and singles, because I knew the further north I got, the more current the music was going to be. And when I brought it down and made a mixtape, it still hadn't gotten here, so I was brand new. My mixtapes had all the exclusives.
Well, but you went to New York.
I tried. Well, I mean, I'm starting in Atlanta, and they already had stuff.
Right.
But it was really just a geographical, up and down.
What year are we talking about?
No, this is, like I said, it's fast forward. This is already like 92 and 93.
Right. Well, like in the early 80s, like not early 80s, but mid 80s, late 80s, right? The culture itself, Miami has its own culture. LA has its own culture. Absolutely. Like the culture itself and what the prevailing, beat, the prevailing message, the prevailing talk, what's on people's mind, it's different.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So like now there's way more people listening for your lyrics. Like, a Rick Ross, and I'm sure there's many other, Daddy, Trina, like they got bars.
Right.
Not just rhyming over the beat, like, it's a fun song. Yeah, we're gonna party. It's a party record, but the approach itself is different. But it's still Miami. It's still South Florida. It's not New York. It's
right. But you see, what you're explaining there and what you're showing is exactly what I'm saying. Like, those guys are obviously Miami.
Yeah.
So they were being exposed to all this stuff. And so, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, Miami-based music and that whole genre, if you want to even call it a genre, was basically, it's a part of our culture in Miami. So, but then back then you had hip hop heads, and then you had people that were not hip hop heads. I tell people hip hop heads in that time frame, at least in Miami, I can't speak for everywhere else, was akin to the goth kids in school. Like, you knew that group over there, those are the hip hop heads. And in Miami as a whole city, we all kind of went to the same places because it wasn't many places you could go and experience hip hop. And we all kind of knew each other, at least by face. It was a couple thousand of us. So from that, we're all getting these influences. But if you considered yourself, or if you lived in Miami and you kind of like you were a Miami head, Miami-based music was just another part of our regular day culture. So if we had a party, you'd have the DJ would play a hip hop set that was, mostly music coming out of the East Coast, out of the Northeast. And then you had a reggae set because dancehall and reggae is another big part of the Miami culture. And then you had a Miami bass set, because the reggae and the bass sets were what you danced with the chicks with. And then the hip hop records were just for you to just, jam out to, or the B-boys would hit the floor. So it was all a part of our culture. So when you fast forward and you have artists like a Rick Ross or anybody that you're saying that's lyrical, they had the influences, of course, of the Two Life Crews and the Gucci Crews, MC Shy D's, and the DJ sets, like the ghetto style DJs and all that. But they were exposed to other music, mainly coming out of New York and stuff like that. But also a lot of the West Coast stuff. The thing I think was dope about places like Miami is that if you were a hip hop head, you were usually going to be more open to, stuff out like from every region, as long as it was just dope.
Yeah, so, first time I came down was in 89, 88, 89. And blew my mind. I always had a love affair with Miami. It's fantasy land. Like, you just think fantasy.
Right.
And I came down back then, just the way the promoter brought us down and put us up. Like, it fulfilled the fantasy. And then when I came down, as with Channel Live as a part of the whole Madism movement during the How Can I Be Down years,
right,
I got a chance to take a trip out to what is now called Wynwood.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't what
Shout
it was.
out DJ Raw and them. Yep.
Yeah, DJ Raw in there for Hoodstock. And when you had to touch down with DJ Raw, we used to go to a pirate radio station that the broadcast signal was off of a bus.
Yeah, that was Raw Station.
That was Raw Station, yeah. And like you had to go through there and do that.
DJ Classic, I think, was one of the DJ. He was DJ Chris back then.
Yeah, so coming down, like going from 88, 89, then coming out of 94, 95, and seeing the embrace with the hip hop that more or less I recognized, right? That
right.
I'm familiar with, was like night and day. Can you talk about like those early years? Because when we first got down with KRS, it was one name he kept saying over and over and over again: Mother Superior, Mother Superior. Yo, it's the queen down in Miami. Yo, Mother Superior. Just to talk about like that era of Miami hip hop.
I mean, that era is so important. It's the era that really inspired me and the Crazy Hood movement. Early on, like early 90s, my whole thing was I'm just a fan of the culture, fan of the music. I want to support it at any level as a fan, as a consumer, and go to everything I can. And as a Miami hip hop head, one of the things that I was looking for was stuff that would represent Miami, which was kind of hard to find within the hip hop community at first, because most of the heads that were doing a lot of stuff were emulating New York and representing New York, or they were, they had moved down from New York, so they'd still kind of rep New York. So that was the divide that kind of, in my opinion, made that kind of rift between, what became the Miami scene and the Miami bass scene, and then like this hip hop scene, because it was looked at as this invading New York thing coming in. But for us that weren't from New York, we were just like, look, we Miami hip hop heads, and we want to just, represent and find hip hop that reps Miami. And when I came across Mother Superior and what she was doing, and there was a dude named Mangu and the Science Room and Plan Beat and all these guys, but Mother Superior, above all, she was just so dope, and she could battle and be amongst the top of anybody that was coming out at the time. That it was just such a pride. Like, I would get chills hearing her records on the pirate radio stations. And then when she did a record called Rock Bottom, forget about it, which was all about Miami. And those are the type of things that I, as a Miami hip hop head, was looking for. And it helped to give pride to our scene, because our scene was lacking pride. I mean, imagine a time where people wouldn't even say they were from Miami in the hip hop scene, wouldn't wear a shirt that rep Miami or Dade or anything like that. Like, I almost say that I feel like my crew was one of the first crews to start to do that, wear it on our sleeves. And so she helped create that pride, because it was just, without a doubt, she was so dope. And at that time, just although there was a lot of female MCs, it was still kind of rare for female MCs to come out and for them to be so raw and so dope and so lyrical. And she was all of that. She was the complete package. And then extra pride for me because I'm in South Miami, Kendall to be exact, but she rap Ghouls, which is a little further south from me, but she's from the South End, which that's another thing. Miami had this weird like North Miami versus South Miami thing within the hip hop scene and in other scenes. So she was from the South. So she was just so dope, and she got a deal and all of that stuff. So it was just, we were really proud of her, and she helped kind of like bring us all together as a scene.
Wow. So you just talked about like the different sections of Miami, and for outsiders, we look at Miami as South Beach, and that's Miami.
Yeah, definitely not what we look at it.
So yeah, you get to feel Miami for what it really is, and you see it's bigger than South Beach. Can you talk about like the different areas of Miami, sets, crews, hip hop crews that represent different sets and territories, so folks understand, like when you hear a Ross and how he says things or how he approaches things, it's because he came from here. Right,
from Carroll City. Yeah, I mean, I'll try to collect my thoughts. I have a thing called Bacardi brain, and now it's a beer brain. My memory has gone down the hill, man. It's really crap nowadays. But and oftentimes, like I call it drunk facts on Drink Champs, because I always want to make an excuse for being off by a year or off by a name.
I was drunk. Charles,
drunk facts. I forgot that name that day, and often I'll get people hitting me up like, "Yo, you forgot this," and I'll be like, "Yo, I'm sorry, drunk facts." But yeah, the areas were important and crucial to like the specific sounds in the city. Like I think like any city in any region, and we had Kendall, which at that time people might have not thought of repping Kendall. It's like a suburban area of Miami, if you really think about it. But fast forward, and then they create the movie Cocaine Cowboys, and it explains what Kendall really was, and it made sense for us that lived in Kendall. Kendall was not this regular suburbia that everybody thinks that it was from the outside.
If you from the Northeast and you driving through Kendall, it looks like paradise.
Right. It does.
I ain't wilding out here. What's going on? But
right. I mean, this is what Kendall is to me. Kendall was where all the drug dealers that made a little money built their cribs. Basically, it was built by drug money. And I'm not saying this as to be a proudful thing. I'm just saying what it is.
Factual.
And a lot of my friends in school, their parents were like ex-mafia people that like their dad got out of prison, and then they this is where they came to retire. So like the mind state in Miami, in Kendall, was a little bit different than anywhere else, but misunderstood because people just looked at it as a suburb.
So that's that Jadakiss line: "Gangsters don't die; they just get chubby and move to Miami."
Yeah, Kendall's one of those places.
But then, you juxtapose that against like with Wynwood, which wasn't Wynwood back in the 90s. What was it?
It was Wynwood. It was Wynwood. It was just not anywhere anybody wanted to go.
Right. It was like, destitute, derelict, broken down, drug addicts, prostitution, all that. Just, we all
hip hop. Because that's what, how I said back in the days, there was very few places where we could go and experience hip hop. And DJ Raw created that place for us. And it didn't matter what you thought of Wynwood. If you didn't want to go to Wynwood, that was the place to go. You had to go there. Yeah. And we would all go there happily and be there, man. And I remember one time taking a cab to there. I didn't have a ride. And I remember the cab driver going, "You going to Wynwood?" Like, "Nah, man. What, you going to buy crack or something?" And I'm like, nah. But,
wow.
That was the era. Wynwood was not a place that people went to. And the reason why it became what it is now is because it was such a desolate place, and that's where like all the graffiti artists would go and have penance, because they weren't really getting bothered by the cops, because there was all these broken down buildings or just warehouse district or just places where the cops weren't going to really fuck with you. Mm-hmm. So that's why all these graffiti pennants came up, and that's why all the art world in Miami started to center around that area.
And like that's important for people to know on a bunch of different levels, right? Culture freedom. I'm working on an album right now called Aubrey. I have a song called Culture Freedom, right? And it's about hip hop and, when we're allowed to be free, what happens, right? So in this desolate area where people are allowed to be creatively free, Wynwood is now one of the largest art districts in the world, and draws millions of people to this area every year for the Art Basel, festival.
Right.
So that, again, born out of, not just hip hop, but hip hop culture, that, that ability to freely express yourself and put up the graffiti art, and then attracting people who appreciate art and culture, and then that creating revenue and finance and all types of other things. Like, that's important for people to understand. That's why I asked that question about the different districts of Miami and the type of energy it produces, because having DJ Raw there, him being into, traditional hip hop, for lack of a better term,
Right.
brought an energy there, amongst other things.
And shout out Zulu Nation, that was a big part of Raw's movement, and we're also heavily embedded in Wynwood as well.
Some of those other folks, I'm not from here. Again, I don't want to be remiss in not mentioning other folks who added to the pie. So if you know those folks, like my boy Class, big shout out to Tariq.
Yeah.
He's another person. When I first came down, he embraced me, and then he knew like everybody and their mother, and everybody knew him. And then you realize how closely knit people are down here, which I think is really dope.
And that goes back to what I was telling you. We kind of all knew each other, if not personally, but by face, because there was only a few thousand of us that would go to all these events.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I remember my whole thing was I went to the first time Wu-Tang came to Miami, first time Redman came to Miami, first time Biggie came to, and you would see all the same heads, or it didn't have to be a performance. If there was just a jam, like Raw and them were throwing jams before Hoodstock in Roberto Clemente Park, which is another interesting part of Wynwood. It was the small pocket of Puerto Ricans. Everybody knows Miami for Cubans and whatnot, but that was that small pocket of Puerto Ricans that was in Miami. And, we would go to Roberto Clemente Park, and Zulu was doing security. And you had the B-boys there, and the DJs and the graph riders. And it was just a beautiful thing, man. I mean, the culture, in my opinion, was very alive and well. We had a lot of great representation. And out of my area, we had DJ Craze, who went on to become, how many times world champion turntablist. And then you had DJ Epps coming out of my area, killing the club scene. You had the Science Room up north that were doing production for everybody out here. We had Society that had come down with Professor Griff and, set up shop and started making music out here and made a great record that also made us proud of Miami. Yes, indeed. And so it was just so much going on, and every region, like you mentioned, had its own sound, had its own contribution, but all, given to that pot that was kind of creating this citywide pride for our scene. But it took us a while, and going back to Mother Superior, what set us back is that she got signed to Island before it was Island Def Jam, and her album got shelved, and her album was amazing. She gave me a promo copy, an advanced copy of it. Amazing album, had Karis One on it, Redman production. The producers were amazing, local and from out of town. And her album got shelved. And I always say that if her album would have came out nationally, it would have changed the sound and landscape of what Miami hip hop is today, I think. And even helped in the whole South, the scheme of the South sound.
That's crazy. Big shout out to Mother Superior, no doubt. Like, and her being a woman, like, that's so dope too. Like, a woman leading the charge. I'm talking about lyrics and bars. And
she's our leader for sure back then, 100%.
That shit is so dope. So, you say, like, that era kind of, inspired, Crazy Hood, your crew, and, when I first came down, I got a chance to check out a premiere of Coming Home. And that's the series, the documentary series that you guys put out, where you travel the world looking for hip hop.
Right. Well, so we're not really looking for it. We know it's there.
We know it's there. But it's still, you dig it. It's
right.
For the average American who's in the hip hop, we focused on what's going on the radio.
Right.
Even, aside from going around the world, there's so much hip hop that happens right in front of our face that we just miss that. To think to go around the world and see hip hop bigger and better. Hip hop,
right.
The culture,
yeah,
rhymes, breaking, DJing,
all the elements,
art, fashion, like the culture Please talk about coming home, bro.
Coming home is really a huge passion project of mine. Started in 2012. I decided I had been wanting to go to Cuba, which is my family's Cuban, and I wanted to see Cuba kind of like in its bubble. But if you understand the dynamic between with Cuban Americans and the Cuban exile community, especially in South Florida, it was like taboo. They don't want you to go to Cuba. They feel like that's contributing to the regime out there. So it took a while for me to like finally convince myself and kind of like decide to go out there. And we made the trip in 2012. And I had a friend that also had gone before us who had connected with the hip hop community there. And I was like, all right, let's link with these cats out there and let's film this whole thing. It was an amateur film. Wasn't meant to be anything crazy, just something for ourselves. Came back, edited it, and we showed it to people. And a lot of people really liked it. It got picked up by film festivals, won some awards. And a lot of people from all walks of life, all nationalities and ethnicities and backgrounds were like, yo, this is dope. I would love to go and follow my family roots and check out what the scene is in my parents' homeland. And so I was a big fan of Anthony Bourdain already. And a lot of people use his name when they talk about travel stuff, but I was really a fan of what he did. His expertise was he was a chef in food, and he used his expertise to like have that dialogue with people in the country and find out like what's really going on in this country. And I felt like I wanted to do that using hip hop as that conduit to conversation. So after Cuba, we went to Peru, we went to Haiti, went to Vietnam, Colombia, which is unreleased, and we went to South Africa recently, which is in post-production. The first 4 came out on Revolt TV, and we're currently in a lot of conversations with a lot of people to get these films, to a bigger audience and produce more of them.
I caught the when you guys went to Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and, there you see the cultural differences with hip hop, even with Asia, how Japan approaches it different than China, which is approaching in Vietnam. And you talk about those differences because again, we so focused on the United States of America, we don't realize how impactful our culture is worldwide, and how many people embrace it, and how they see it and perceive it, and the differences.
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway that I've been having from these films, and what I'm trying to relay back to folks here in the States, is that as much of an inspiration and how much we've inspired internationally, and what hip hop, the seed we planted with hip hop everywhere, we're losing our grip, our influence. Everywhere I've gone so far, every single country, I've been told you guys no longer do hip hop. And you could take that for whatever you want. And look, don't get me wrong. Like it's a fine line to be a purist and also make a living, in the entertainment business and through hip hop. But, it is what it is, man. Like they see that we've just turned into an industry that's all about making money, and we've kind of lost our way when it comes to the art, and they see it. And it's really ill to see them articulate that in a way that I'm just like blown away that they get it from so far away. And it's not to say that they don't want to make money and that and some of them, in some of the countries where our influence is negative. Like it's like we're really sending negative messages to them, and they're taking them on, and it's growing out there. But that's one of the things that I've really like been, made aware of, and I focus on, and I try to like relay back here is like, look, guys, if you look at this as a business, let's just say, take away the art part of it, look at it as a business. Is it smart business to lose our influence internationally, where we could all be making more money internationally, have more fans, do more touring, do all this stuff, because we're so busy chasing the money that we're not putting time into our art anymore out here, and it's being noticed around the world. And so what's happening now is that they're all looking to themselves and their regional, like other countries that are close to them. Like, for example, in Vietnam, they're looking to Korea or Japan or China. Well, China not so much, but because they have like a little regional beef with China. But Japan and Korea is a big influence to them. So they might get influenced by Japan before they get influenced by the United States now.
It's crazy.
They're shutting off the things. Like I get hit up people that are fans of Drink Champs. They're like, yo, people in my country, I want to help Drink Champs get popping out here. They're not really onto it. And I'm like, how are you on? He's like, nah, I'm looking for stuff in the States. Nobody here is really checking for that stuff anymore.
Mm.
And you know, I think that should open all of our eyes and really understand when some of us complain about the culture going a certain direction, or we feel like, you know, people lost the ability to be lyrical, or they're not putting time into basically getting their skills up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we're just being old heads, basically, you know.
No.
We're, you know, it's starting to be evident as a product that's lacking internationally.
Yeah.
If
I
you
got
want to just look at it as business, you know.
I got this thing. When anything goes, everything will, right? So if you have no standards, if you have no protocol, if you have no, you have no ethic, the idea of tradition is out the window. The idea of valuing, what came before is out the window.
Right.
And then you get stuck in the now. But the thing with the now is that there's always tomorrow. You know, as much as you lose connection to your past is as much as you lose connection to the future.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how, we kind of get so stuck in the now, what's happening right now, what's making money right now, that we're not planting seeds for the future. Sometimes you got to go back under, not sometimes, in order for things to grow, it has to go underground.
Yep.
You got to take it underground. So the disrespect for the underground is just, it is what it is. But, your documentary series was one of the things that helped me realize that hip hop, is alive. It is well. There's actually nothing wrong with hip hop. Because when we say hip hop, we generally mean the rap music business.
Right.
Just in hip hop. Your presence on the Drink Champs. Well, first of all, how did the Drink Champs come about? Because that's prior to seeing it happen.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a weird combination.
Right. A couple people have told me that lately. I'll try to condense a really long story, but in short, Nori and I met when he was on this promo run for CNN when Pone was locked up. And I had a store called Crazy Goods with my homie Eddie Giggs. And back in those days, this is 97 era. The internet was around, but people didn't promote on the internet. So the promoters would take the artists and do like in stores. So they came by my store, Crazy Goods, and Nori came through. And we already knew I'm a mixtape DJ, so to me, Nori was heavily buzzing. CNN was heavily buzzing, so I was hyped to have him come through. And I had this 4-track, which I have actually right in front of me, that Karis One called it the Mini Chung King Studios. I had this 4-track set up with beats, and he laid some freestyles for me, and we just hit it off. I don't know why we hit it off. I don't know if it's the Latino side of him. I don't know. We just hit it off. And his crew hit it off with my crew, and we were just all down for each other. And I'm sure him as an artist, he was being tactful in creating alliances with DJs in all these regions that he was going to and all these cities he was going to. It was smart on his part. And so we just stayed connected. And he was almost on every mixtape after that. And we just were, my group that I had, the Alliance, went on tour with CNN at one point. We were always opening up for Nori. I did his first solo show in Miami as just Nore. I did the first show. I did the Capone Home show in Miami. So we were doing a lot of stuff together. So fast forward, he ends up moving to Miami after he did the reggaeton stuff. He knew I was never a big fan of reggaeton. He saw me as like this hip hop purist. And so he's like, yo, E, he basically said, bring me back to hip hop. So he moved close to my studio here in Kendall. We worked out of my studio. He was there more than me, and put him down with Hazardous Sounds. And we were in Big Drain, and we were just producing stuff and getting stuff out there and bringing them back to that like hip hop mind state. And in those studio sessions, we would drink a lot. He would smoke, whatever. And we would just throw around this term. My crew, we would say like, you're not a drink champ if you couldn't handle your liquor. So that was parallel as just a term that we would use. And at the same time, we ended up doing a Sirius XM show called Militainment Crazy Raw Radio out of my studio, which sounds and looks like Drink Champs back then. We stopped doing that. He goes on tour with Pone. I go on tour. I was starting to manage a group, Mayday, which I have a plaque for Mayday right here, who signed to Strange Music. And I was trying to figure out a way that we could do that same. Go ahead.
Big shout out to Mayday.
Oh, huge shout out to Mayday.
If you don't know, you need to do your Googles, research. This band is off the chart bars, flows for days.
Everything.
Mayday, check it out.
Yeah, man. This plaque is a record they did with Tech Nine and Kendrick Lamar. So yeah, definitely check out Mayday. But so I was busy with Mayday. Nori was touring, and I had a homie, my homie Godfrey from Kendall. Also, he was doing podcasts before anybody knew what a podcast was. He was doing this from internet radio days. So he was always an advocate for podcasting, and he would tell me, "Yo, you should do that thing with Nori as a podcast." And I like the idea of it because when we did the Sirius XM show, which we didn't make a dime off of, we had to turn it in by a certain day. It had to be a certain length. It had all these like things around it that strict rules in terms of turning it in and scheduling. Podcasts you could do whenever you want, as long as you want, as short as you want, whatever you want. And I like that idea. So when I presented to Nori, he didn't know what a podcast was at first. Like most people in hip hop, he wasn't really with it. It took a couple years to convince him and really get him on board. A couple people had actually reached out to him and said, you should also do a podcast as that thing that you were doing with EFN. And finally, he got on board. But that whole time that I was waiting for him to get on board to do a podcast, I had loved that Drink Champs term so much that I had grabbed the .com. I had grabbed the social media handles. I had my boy Legendary Scam, create a logo. And I'm screwing up the timeline, but basically I had Drink Champs ready. I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know it was going to be a podcast. I just had it ready to go. And when Nori was ready to do a podcast, I just presented like, hey, let's call it Drink Champs. I got everything ready to go. And he was with it. And we did it.
Man, that is incredible because
that's a short version of it.
what that's turned into, you guys have like turned the page in hip hop, so to speak. All right. It's things that you turn the page, and you guys weren't the first to do a podcast or, have this internet, online interview platform, but the way you guys approach it,
right?
Honesty, the realness, the knowledge, the variety, like the fact that you guys focus on the OGs and pulling that knowledge out, and you guys, and I like it because you guys steer away from the from just the bullshit.
Right.
Yeah, we talk about what's current, yeah, but there's a just a positive direction that you guys have. Nori is incredibly brilliant. Like, I knew him through the industry, but I didn't know him.
Right.
Getting to know him is like, dude, you are like a million times smarter than I really gave you credit for.
Right.
Because we kind of put things in a box, gangster music, street music, and you think one way, but then you see a brother business mind, it's just, salute to him. I had someone say to me earlier today that they reach out to you constantly to say to you that you're the glue.
Shout out to that person.
He's like, I shout about all the time and tell him he's the glue. And I get that because, you have a way of bringing it back to the reality, or the reality that I subscribe to.
Right.
Very rare to hear people voice like, wait a minute, I recognize that. Yeah, E. How does that, you being in environments where you definitely are the alternate perspective,
right,
going on at the table? How is that? How do you manage that?
I mean, I'm just being myself. My thing is, look, I took the role. I always understood what it was going to be like, the dynamic between myself and Nori. We had already been down with each other for a while. I had DJ'd on tour for him. So I really looked at it as another DJ MC type of, environment. He's the MC. He's the one who's going to kind of lead these conversations. He's the artist that's known, and I'm the DJ playing the back row, which I've always wanted to be. No problem with it. But I'm always going to be myself, that when I want to say something, when I hear something that I feel that I should interject or something I wanted to bring up, for the 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to be that balance for the show. And I'm also going to help out if I feel that, because we're all drinking. It's legit. We all get drunk. And, maybe the liquor didn't hit me yet and it hit Nori, because maybe he's drinking more because he's more engaged in the convo in a certain way. And so maybe there's a point where I pick up the slack if there's needs to be. So to me, it's all organic. It's all natural. We don't really strategize on it. early on, I said one of our catchphrases was the most professional, unprofessional podcast, because that's what it is. We're the most professional at just being ourselves, and being ourselves sometimes is very unprofessional. And Nori's gonna, or myself, we might cut off people, and because we're trying to bring to the audience those same conversations that we were having in the studio, those same conversations we're having in the barbershops. Like, legitimately, those are the type of conversations we're having. And if we're having drinks, you better know that you're cutting off the person. You're getting louder. You know, you're getting emotional sometimes, and then you're laughing afterwards. And that's the type of conversation and content that we've been trying to create. And we've never tried to like strategize on how do we approach an interview or politics behind it. It's just, all right, let's sit down. I mean, me personally, I don't take any, I don't do any research. I go off of purely the organic conversation and what I know about the people.
Now that's amazing, because the wealth of knowledge that you guys bring to the table in terms of politics, in terms of hip hop, in terms of music, being able to carry that conversation with so many different people. With madism, it's mad-ism. Of course, ism is the ism, but it's also, racism, sexism,
right,
classism, lyricism, journalism, and of course, last month was Hip Hop History Month, so I definitely wanted to get the history, locked in, but also, this new wave of hip hop journalism, is something you guys are like spearheading. I mean, you weren't the first, but you guys are fucking pioneering something that's tremendous. What is your take on, this new era of information and how hip hop is kind of, cornered a market, a niche in delivering information?
I mean, it could be a double-edged sword, and I appreciate you calling us, saying we're kind of like journalism, but I try to shy away from calling ourselves journalists, just because I try to respect anybody that actually went to school and try to be a journalist or anything like that.
Even with the Coming Home series, like that's investigative. That's to a degree. I mean,
I appreciate it.
We're going to show hip hop, but the way it's approached, man, it's like there's a professionalism to that.
Right.
That's, journalistic. I don't,
I guess what I would say is what I think is dope now. And I think I'm very proud, and I hope that I could say this, and most people would agree that Drink Champs helped inspire a lot of hip hop artists and hip hop related content out there, podcasts to be specific. And I think that's dope, man. I couldn't ask for anything else for kind of a legacy that we could help other people, find, get their voice out there more, find their voice or whatever. And I just think that what's dope is it's raw. What's dope about podcasting, what's dope about the type of stuff we're doing, it's raw, it's unfiltered. You're getting, people could take a lot of negative out of sometimes unfiltered stuff. But if you got any knowledge in yourself, you would understand that what you really should be getting at. It's like when you're trying to get that diamond out of that dirt. Yeah, there's dirt. You're not going to see the diamond, but when you shake it up, then you get that diamond. And that's what I feel like the type of content that we're creating, that, if someone just turns us on and they see a bunch of drunk guys on there, they're going to be like, this is whack. This is a bunch of ignorant, drunk assholes talking. But if they were to sit there and listen, they'd see that it's not a bunch of drunk assholes talking. We're really just dudes talking about the culture that we love and we're passionate about. And we're trying to get all these stories that, you wouldn't normally hear, get perspectives you wouldn't normally hear, get people to talk about the way they thought about things back then and how it applies today. Like, there's just so much, I think, wealth of knowledge that we're trying to access. And what's dope is I think there's a lot of people starting to do that now, and it's only going to benefit the culture. More voices, I say, the better. Let's give all these perspectives out there and let's put it all out there.
So what's been your favorite episode so far?
That's hard. They're all like my children, but I don't really have a favorite episode. The fun ones for me have always been the comedians, because I love a good laugh. So like Marlon Wayne on there and Mike Epps, those are hilarious ones. The Busta one recently is really up there in my top 5. Yeah. 50 Cent, I always say, was one of my favorite ones, because I didn't really have like I didn't really have any kind of relationship with 50 Cent or know him much before that. And my expectation was totally different from what he came and did. And he understood, like a lot of people would come to Drink Champs, especially in that time frame, not really understanding Drink Champs. And he came with an understanding of what it was, you know, and he was very like interactive in the show. And I thought that was really dope of him. So that was a favorite one of mine as well. But I love them all, you know, and there's something about each one that's special, you know, like a nugget that I didn't even know. Or I love it when I found out about something I don't know. I'm like, oh, it blows me away. And
give us something.
I mean, I can't really. I have Bacardi Beer right now, but I mean, like for example, let's just talk about the most recent one. When Murder Mook talks about DMX having his dog do the ad-libs, you know, for him at a freestyle, like something like that. I had never heard anything like that, you know, like you would imagine that would happen with DMX,
but he never really
so ill. That's so ill, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, another golden nugget that I didn't know, and it was confirmed on Fatherhoods. Which shout out to my Fatherhoods podcast as well.
Let's talk about that, by the way.
But really quick, and we'll segue into it. Busta, I'm a huge fan of Goody Mob, and then Busta mentioned that he's the one who gave Goody Mob the book, the Pale Horse book. What's the full title? Beware the right. So he gave them that, and that's what put them on to some of, you know, a lot of the ideology that came behind their album and the music after that. I never knew that. I wouldn't even thought of that.
That's crazy.
That it was Busta. And then CeeLo confirmed it on an episode of Fatherhoods, which is out this week, that has Goody Mob on.
That's dope. That's crazy, because I've also given CeeLo a piece of literature, Signs and Symbols by Albert Churchward. Yeah, and that's good to, like, again, brotherhood, sharing information, knowledge, but fatherhood.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that project, which is you know, it's multi-layered.
Yeah, Fatherhoods is another project that I've been working on for a while. Shout out to my co-hosts and partners in it, KGB and Manny Digital. KGB's in the West Coast, Manny Digital is in New York. And I'm a fairly new father. I have a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old.
Really?
And so I have my kids late in life compared to all my friends. Thank you. Absolutely. And so when my daughter was about to come, you know, I found myself calling my friends who had kids, and I'm just like, you know, asking questions and getting information, and we were just like, you know, what, you know, and thinking about other things we can do to contribute to the culture and create other businesses or whatever, other brands. We came up with like, hey, you know, these conversations we're having, I'm sure there's other fathers out there, other hip hop fathers, sort of say, you know, people like us, like-minded, that would love to hear these conversations and probably need these conversations. And also we felt that for some reason there's a stigma in hip hop where that the men in hip hop aren't stepping up to be fathers, which is false.
Yeah.
And so we thought this would be a dope dope platform to create, to talk about, you know, parenting and being mostly father. I mean, we've had mothers. We've had Angie Martinez talking on there about being a mother. We've had we've had other mothers on there, but we've had people who are grandfathers. Bum B talking about being a grandfather. Thurston Howell being a grandfather. So it's a really dope, another passion project. But I mean, it's turning into, it's a business as well, and it's something that we've been doing for about, I'd say, close to maybe going on to our 2nd year now. And we just signed a new deal, as a matter of fact, a new advertising deal. So we're excited.
Congratulations. Now, you know, I got a hashtag, hip hop nobody rapping, right? And when you hear projects like this, that's hip hop, nobody's rapping.
Right.
Fatherhood, you know what I mean? Like that's parenthood.
Yeah.
Just, you know, what we're doing in this podcast world, like all the different layers of hip hop is beyond just MCing, and getting people to understand that will help us appreciate and expand the culture so much more. Now expanding the culture online, like this whole new tech wave and what we're able to do with what we're doing right now, like was unthinkable 20 years ago.
Yep.
You know, and so, you know, making use of that and trying to educate folks. Can you give some folks some tips about how to, you know, use this to their best advantage?
I mean, there's so many platforms for people to use. I would just say that there's no excuse that if you want to create content, there's no excuse for you not to create it and distribute it for free or damn near, very cheap. Free and cheap. So if you want to, up your ante, you could put a little money into it, but it's not too expensive to get things going. And I tell people all the time, like, just the problem with some of content creators, just like artists, people just throw their hat in the bag because they're like, oh, I want to get popping. I want to have a mansion. I want to have a car. I want to get money. If that's the reason why you're doing anything, you're already losing from the get.
Yeah.
Create content that you think is valuable, that speaks, that you can speak on because it's something that just comes natural to you. Do it without the idea of making money. I'm not saying don't be smart about business. Don't have a strategy to make money. But if you come in thinking you're going to make money overnight, then that's the wrong reason. You utilize all these platforms that are out here for free, take advantage of them, and just hit the road and create a plan. Say to yourself, I'm going to do this for such and such amount of months, and then look at the data, evaluate. And if you like where it's going, if maybe you just wanted to get 100 listens or 200 followers and you reach that, then cool. If you wanted to get 2,000, like, you set your goals, but be realistic in these goals, because these overnight successes, that's not realistic. And that's where I see most people fail. They're trying to be overnight successes.
Well, just as an example of what you're talking about, I have queued up Coming Home, Haiti, the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to just show our viewers what that was about. And then that's an example of what he's saying in terms of, you just had a camera crew, you had an idea. Of course, you had airline tickets, so you had travel, whatever, but you had a plan, you mapped it out, you successfully reached your goal. And but that said,
and self-invested as well.
Self-invested, that's super important. Like, believe in yourself, do it yourself, invest in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm technically deficient, so you gotta
no, do you think?
Put me in, me see what it works. Let me see.
You can't come up in here if you ain't got permission. You can't. I promise you. You can't come in here. A lot of Americans would be scared to even step a foot outside the car in this neighborhood, but they showed us nothing but love. Yo, it's dope. Let him know that. Even though I don't understand what he's saying, I understand what he's saying. You understand? Some guys, I don't understand. That's exactly the reason why we keep coming home. Trying to prove a point that hip hop, basically is universal. It's a common language. Who's crazy? 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 Yeah, fool. I don't want me to freestyle.
Shout out my dog Rich.
Oh, shit. Come on, bro. Hey, man. Dude, if that don't look like this hip hop CNN, I don't know what the. Come on, fam. Like, I got chills. I don't know about y'all out there in the chat what y'all think, but I got chills. Big shout out to Eric Canada, Sean Rogers, Earth One. What's up? Rich Minotti, DJ Rockwell, you know what it is, bro. Salute, salute, salute. Angel Zulu, what's up, brother? You know what it is down here with us, down here in South Florida. Deshaun, no doubt. I appreciate everybody for checking in. That was Coming Home, Haiti. You know, just talk about that right fast. What that was about, who you had with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, growing up again, it's Miami culture. You know, there's Cubans, Colombians, Haitians, Jamaicans, Bahamians. Like, so in thinking of the first films that I wanted to do, I wanted to kind of look at my crew, which is multicultural, and say, all right, where you from? Have you been to your country yet? My boy Rich had never been to Haiti, and he's Haitian. He's originally from Boston, grew up out here in Miami. And he's like, nah, I never had an idea of wanting to even go to Haiti. He said, you know, and I was like, nah, man, we got to make this happen. And he had a connection because his grandfather is a famous painter. He passed away, but he was a famous painter in Haiti. And he was trying, and they were selling his artwork internationally for all this money, and the family doesn't get anything. So he wanted to go and connect somehow. He heard about his father's paintings in his church that had fallen apart during the earthquake, but that the government was grabbing the artwork because he had painted the church and like saving it because it's expensive paint, artwork. So he went for the first time to Haiti. And to me, it starts with my friends, man, my crew. Like, it was such a beautiful thing to be able to, through hip hop, through what we're doing, take a friend to his parents' homeland and experience that feeling with him, huh?
So Mecca Grimo in there.
Yeah, Mecca was there. I mean, shout out to the whole crew that went out there. It was just a beautiful thing, man. Like, and again, growing up in Miami, I have tons of Haitian friends. Haitian culture is part of our culture in Miami, and so to me, it's like I have to go to Haiti. And the same thing, like, I have Colombian friends. We went to Colombia, so I mean, it's just that's what's important to me. At the end of the day, first it comes with within my crew, within my city. I want to represent the crew, the city, first and foremost, and the culture.
And you do it very well, man. Salute you, DJ EFN. Yes, sir. I appreciate you so much for taking some time with us, man.
Thank you, man.
With us and giving us this hip hop, the South Florida hip hop experience, and keep doing what you're doing. Very proud of you, sir.
You need Mother Superior on here, and if you're not talking to her already, I'll connect you guys.
Let's do it. Let's go. ASAP.
Right.
Let's make it happen. So much. DJ EFN, applause. Salute. Let people know what it is on the outro. So, DJ EFN.
Crazyhood.com, drinkchamps.com, at Who's Crazy on Instagram, at DJ EFN on Twitter, and look out for new Coming Homes. We got Coming Home Colombia that hasn't been released, Coming Home South Africa in post-production, and hopefully a lot more Coming Homes, and Drink Champs for life.
That's right. Salute. This is Madism TV, your boy Hakim Green, and we out of here. Peace.